What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Thunder Burst SMG because SMGs have kind of been ignored for the most part this season, and I've had a lot of people ask me about this weapon. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what you think of the Thunder Burst SMG. So I've thought this weapon was like pretty solid and one of the most underrated weapons in the game from the moment this season dropped, or like, once I had used it a decent amount in this season. Earlier in the season, I had made a video about what I thought was the most underrated weapon, and while I was working on that video, it was kind of between this Burst SMG and the pistol that's in the game currently. Those were the two weapons I was kind of using and going back and forth on and kind of making the topic of that video. I ended up going with the pistol, but I think the Burst SMG is also incredibly good. Even the common version will deal 42 damage per shot and 42 headshot damage. And again, that's the common. The gold one goes up to like 29 body damage. So if you hit all body damage in a burst, you'll get around 70 damage or so, regardless of rarity. And if you mix a headshot or two in there, you can easily get well over 100 damage in a single burst, so that is really good. The fire rate of this burst SMG is also quite high. There really isn't much of a burst delay at all, and you can just hold the fire button down and it will keep shooting out bursts. So I know a lot of people with the burst weapons in Fortnite, they'll kind of tap the shoot button, release it, and then tap it again, because in a lot of games with burst weapons, that's how you have to shoot them. But these burst weapons are basically automatic. They just shoot in 3-shot intervals, so you can hold the shoot button down and it'll keep throwing out burst after burst after burst. Has a really good fire rate, which makes it just not only good for dealing pressure to opponents, but also like destroying cover, maybe pressuring riot shielders. The amount of just bullets you can throw out with this thing is pretty solid, and if any of them connect, you're going to do a good amount of damage. One of the things that makes it really busted, though, is going to be the laser sight attachment, because for some reason, when you have the laser sight on the Burst SMG, it has no bloom in the hipfire at all. It has like perfectly accurate first shot hipfire all the time. When you're shooting, the dashes just are all connected, and so you can melt people down with hipfire shots from a pretty decent range. This makes it really good in close range fights. If you are someone who wanted to use the pump shotgun or just prefers the pump shotgun, comboing like pump into the Burst SMG back to the pump is probably going to be the best way for you to do so. And it kind of feels like a little bit like how double pump was back in the day, where you're just kind of like alternating between two high damage weapons. Like one is a Burst SMG, one is a pump, but like it kind of works similar in that you're just throwing out one shot that's like a lot of damage. In the case of the burst, it's 3, but you kind of get what I'm saying. And this also is really good if you want to shockwave onto somebody. Even if you are someone who prefers the auto, you don't really want to mess with the pump, comboing the auto shotgun with the burst sub with this accurate hipfire is great for like if you snipe somebody and then want to shockwave onto them, or for whatever reason you want to shockwave onto somebody, because while you're in the sky traveling to them with the perfectly accurate hipfire and the high fire rate, you can just spam out shot after shot after shot. And even if your aim isn't the best, you can get out like probably 2 to 5 bursts with this weapon before you end up reaching the opponent. And any bullet that connects is, going to be added damage and make it easier for you to eliminate them when you do actually get into the shotgun fight. Like let's say you body somebody with a sniper, that's 100 damage. Maybe you shockwave onto them because you just hit that body shot. You hit 2 bullets out of a burst, that's like 50 damage. Not the greatest amount, but it's some damage that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. With like another weapon, it's less likely you hit those shots in the air. And so now you've done about like 150, 170 damage to them, depending on like which sniper version you were using, And so now you only need 100 damage out of your auto shotgun to finish that fight, assuming they were at full HP to begin with. And that's assuming you only hit 2 burst shots. You can easily hit more than that, especially if your aim is decent. But even if your aim with the hipfire isn't the greatest, it's not the biggest deal, because it has such a high fire rate that you can put out so many shots. And the range on this thing is actually pretty solid for what you would expect out of an SMG. Also, in times where your auto shotgun needs to be reloaded, if you're an auto shotgun user, you can kind of swap to this, and it plays somewhat similar to how a shotgun would with the hipfire, because you can hit a lot of shots like pretty consistently if your hipfire aim is good. Like I said, 70 damage per burst if you hit all body shots. That is nothing like irrelevant, like that's a solid amount of damage. We all play Fortnite. We know how inconsistent the shotguns can be from time to time. So having 70 damage out of the burst is not bad at all. So if you are someone who's, been caught off guard needing to reload the auto shotgun, the burst SMG can kind of fill that void better than what the hyper SMG does, in my opinion, and better than like what any of the ARs do. Like those weapons aren't bad by any means, but you can play the burst sub just like how you would a shotgun in those close range fights, and it's not that big of a deal at all. So when I was using the burst SMG, I was for zero build. I was running auto shotgun, Thunder Burst SMG, sniper, heals, and mobility. And then for builds, I was running the pump instead of the auto shotgun, obviously. And I know some people really won't want to do this because they feel like they have to have an AR for range, but I don't think giving up your AR for an SMG is that big of a deal this season. One, because like I touched on, the range on this weapon is fine. Like it definitely can perform better at range than like the hyper SMG would, but also all the ARs this season are projectile, so it's pretty inconvenient to use them at range anyways, and that was my biggest inconvenience when using the burst SMG at range, was just like the bullet drop and the bullet travel time. It's pretty noticeable, but it's not like you're fighting people 60, 70 meters with ARs this season. Not only are the ARs more inconvenient to do that with because they're all projectile, but also the snipers are so incredibly good. And like I touched on with like what I was using, I'm running a sniper anyways. And like if you guys have watched any of my videos, I've talked a lot about how good the snipers are this season and how that kind of invalidates ARs, because even if you're only 40 meters away, that's not really that far of range. But if you're sitting there with your AR like spraying somebody, they only have to hit you for like a brief second to eliminate you with the sniper. So I feel like a lot of the more like medium long range fights this season just aren't even fought with ARs anyways. They're fought with snipers. So giving up your AR for this burst SMG to have that added pressure when you do hit a body shot, or to maybe shore up some weakness in close range, I think is quite good. And I didn't really notice myself missing that added range as much as you would think, because it is such a sniper centric meta. If you are good at sniping, then you just have the sniper for long range anyways, and you're probably going to prefer that. So there's no real loss there. But like I already said, you probably don't want to be peeking into snipers with an AR anyways, like those, I feel like with how the meta has shifted with all the ARs being projectile, I'm mostly using my AR at like kind of medium range anyways, or like what the SMG could do just fine anyways. The thing I noticed most when using it was when people were in cars driving away from me, I definitely would prefer to have had the striker AR in a lot of those situations over the burst SMG. Or at times when people were shockwaving away or grappling away, you do notice the bullet drop, I think, a decent amount with the burst SMG, but the accuracy on it is fine and the damage at range is fine. It's mostly just the bullet travel time that's an inconvenience. That's even an inconvenience with the ARs. I haven't played that much with the burst SMG, so like maybe as time goes on, I will get better at like understanding the bullet drop. But as of now, I think I probably would still prefer the striker AR, but the burst SMG is incredibly good too. And I think if you're playing team game modes, you have fights that are a lot more like scrappy at times. I think I maybe would rather have the burst SMG for those fights, because like if my auto shotgun runs out of ammo, like I said, or just dealing with like kind of, 15, 20 meters away fights, I'd rather have the burst SMG than the AR. And the attachments I was using on the burst SMG, it's going to be your choice of sight or no sight. I would use one of the first two red dots though if you are going to use one. I think I was using the 1.35x most. I liked the speed mag just for the faster reload, especially because this thing does spam out a lot of bullets. The laser sight, like I touched on, is going to make the hipfire perfectly accurate, and that's kind of the main reason of using this as a weapon that you use to push people. Like I think that's where it shines best, is when you're shockwaving on somebody. Being able to hit all those hipfire shots is great. And then it does the other things just okay. And then for my barrel attachment, I was using the muzzle brake for reduced recoil. And I think that is one of the things, like I said, the accuracy at range isn't the biggest problem. It's just the bullet travel time. I thought the recoil on this weapon was very controllable with the muzzle brake on. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, informative, interesting. I hope you try out the burst SMG. I think it is very, very good and very underrated and very fun to play with, especially if you're like, if you play like how I do, and that you snipe most of the time and then once you hit a body shot and then you push. Like I feel like most fights this season are either I'm using my sniper or I'm using my auto shotgun. I'm not using the AR or SMG as much. So having this to kind of complement the shockwave push, I think is very good. But let me know what you guys think of the Burst SMG down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.